it's the lady in her car again. So I had some more thoughts, not necessarily about Endgame per se, but my conversation about Endgame yesterday made me want to go ahead and talk about this a little bit because it relates. I wanted to talk about theory, specifically critical theory, specifically what's considered, at least in my circles, to be literary critical theory, but it applies to art, or can apply to art in general. I wanted to talk about moral criticism, and I wanted to talk about dramatic construction. They're both my least favorite of theories to work with from a critical analysis standpoint, because I find them kind of boring. But that said, they are both theories that the stuff I talked about yesterday kind of touch on, and they're both theories that we all just kind of do, even when we don't really think about it. So moral criticism goes back to Plato, and for Plato, art didn't have any value unless it could make somebody a better citizen of the Republic. He thought art for the sake of entertainment alone was not good quality and potentially harmful. If it had a good moral message and can make somebody a better citizen, it was good art. That was Plato's idea of art. Aristotle came along and wasn't quite so keen on that. He thought art could be intrinsically good for its own sake. And he came up with some guidelines for what would make art good. And that's where we get the ideas of a good solid plot, good solid characters, all of those things as being what makes art good. So, yeah. So going back to moral criticism. Oh, and I will have links in the description to just a couple of resources to read more, mostly about moral criticism because there was just more stuff about it, but it will touch on dramatic construction as well. Going back to moral criticism, so modernly, we're not so concerned with art making somebody a better person. Mostly because we have a little bit better of an understanding of the effect that art and media have on people. Going back to video games, and violence in video games and violence in movies is probably the easiest way to touch on this, and a term that is like right here in my brain and I can't quite access it, but basically it's the idea that there is a certain amount of influence that media can have on a person. It does not make you do something, but it can make you think that doing something is good, or it can otherwise affect your opinions on a thing. So violent video games aren't going to go and make you kill people. Violent movies aren't going to go and make you kill people. But they can affect your opinion of violence in specific types of situations. And they can affect how much violence you think is present in the world. So, yeah. But talk about the idea of something having an effect on you, be that video game violence or even things like, my favorites with feminist criticism, and the effects that media has on a person. All of those things harken back to Plato's ideas of moral criticism and the importance of morality and moral lessons in art. It all harkens back to that. So you can blame Plato for feminists existing if you don't like us. Me. So when I was talking about the death of Gamora, and I said something to the effect of the right kind of sacrifice, or good sacrifice versus bad sacrifice. I don't remember the exact word I said. I was making a very loaded moral statement there about what is right and what is wrong to do. And I kind of broke it down in comparing the two scenes and trying to decide whether or not I thought there might be some kind of additional feminist message that somebody could read into it. But taking the scene at its face value, there is a moral distinction drawn between the evil of Thanos sacrificing Gamora and the good of Black Widow sacrificing herself. And so that idea that there is some kind of moral thing there to display falls within the realms of moral criticism. Moral criticism in Plato's day would more ask, is Endgame teaching you the value of sacrifice and the value of self-sacrifice? I mean, no, let's be honest, it's not. It's a movie, and it's Marvel, and it's Disney. They just want to entertain us and make us happy, so we buy more movies. And the toys. Buying the toys is always good. But that we can still read a moral message into it, that we can still read a distinction of good and evil, does still fall within that realm of moral criticism. So, yeah, there's that. The death of Tony Stark, and the rather lengthy discussion I had about that and my feelings of it and how effective I felt that was, and whether I thought ultimately it was good. So that would fall within Aristotle's ideas of dramatic construction. I am talking, because I was talking specifically about plot points and the way that those plot points wrapped up, and the effect that that had on me as a viewer, me as the audience. And my discussion of whether that made it good or whether it affected the goodness or the effect of it, that would fall within dramatic construction. I'm talking about the value of the art from the point of view of the constructed piece, the pieces that go into the construction of that art. And yeah, so that's a couple of theories. What's interesting about this is that while I was thinking about the movie critically when I was discussing it yesterday, I was not really thinking about it in terms of specific theories. When I like to go and do reviews, I've done book reviews before, I've done TV and movie reviews before. When I go in to do a specific review, I like to sit down and think about it in terms of a critical theory to give myself a lens. And I usually will pick something that seems fitting to the work in question in order to do an analysis of it. Some works fit really well in Marxist ideas. Some fit really well with gender studies or with queer theory or with feminist theory. Others might fit well with postmodernism or modernist ideas or whatever. There's a lot of them. I'm going to talk about them all one day. I do have a blog where I've talked about them in the past too, and I'll put some links to that stuff in the description too, just in case you're interested. But when I was talking yesterday, I wasn't really thinking about any of these lenses. I was just thinking about the movie itself and the discussion. About the only lens I actually had in mind was the feminist lens with regards to talking about Black Widow and Gamora, and trying to poke at that a little bit and see what I could find. Still haven't made up my mind on that. But otherwise, I wasn't really thinking about any other kind of lenses for what I was looking at, which is why I say the ideas of Plato's moral criticism, of Aristotle's dramatic construction, these are things that have filtered down through the years in different theories. These are not things that we've ever in Western literary criticism have ever really let go of. We still look for the ways that art affects us, whether we're expecting art to teach us a moral lesson or not. We still look for the effects that it has. We still have a lot of discussions about this, whether we are using a piece of art as a metaphor for some kind of social or political discussion, or whether we are discussing the art itself as part of social phenomenon and social construction for issues that affect our society. We still talk about the importance of dramatic construction when we are talking about whether or not works of art are good. When we talk about characterization, how a character comes across, whether it's on a page or on a screen or in a video game, which I guess is still technically on a screen, we are still talking about these ideas that Aristotle started with. Plot. If a plot has holes in it, if it seems, contrived or whatever, these are all ideas that harken back to Aristotle, and these are so ingrained in how we look at and consume and even produce media that we don't really even think about using those as a lens. And I find that kind of interesting. I do find that kind of a challenge too. Thinking about moving forward and doing more criticism and doing it more vigorously and more often, that I'm going to have to look at, not only the lens that I'm intending to look, but also these unconscious lenses that I'm going to end up using because they've become part of our critical language. And I'm going to have to ask myself, is that affecting the meaning that I'm drawing out of the work as well? So, there you go. So yeah, that's what I wanted to talk about. Just, a brief overview of moral criticism and dramatic construction. I don't know if scholars would necessarily agree with me in my assessment of how moral criticism and dramatic construction have trickled down over the ages. I think that they probably would, or at least I think most would. I think you would have a hard time finding disagreement with regards to dramatic construction, because it is literally how we talk about media. Just if you hop over to CinemaSins is 100% criticizing on the basis of dramatic construction. They look for mistakes that are made in a movie, and they score and take away points based on that. So, moral criticism, though, is something that scholars might not agree with me necessarily on how that has trickled down through the ages, and whether or not it informs Marxist criticism and postmodernism and feminism as well. Like I said, I think it does. They might. I honestly haven't asked. So yeah. But yeah, I'm going to put a couple of links in the description. I'm going to put a link to my own blog and the discussions I've had on literary theory in general before. And at some point, I'm going to do like a big overview of literary criticism in general and the different schools. Because when we say literary criticism, that's a big, giant umbrella term that actually encompasses a lot of different ways to look at literature. There's not just one lens to interpret literature or film or video games or whatever from. And I'll probably include one or two links to other videos of other YouTube creators who've done criticism using some of these lenses before, just so that you can see other examples. Once I start doing regular videos and not just vlogs in my car, when I'm looking at works through different literary or critical lenses, I will be doing companion videos with those, where I'll be talking, just like I am right now, about the theory in question and where it comes from, some of the history or context around it, just so that when I'm talking about whatever and I'm using this lens, you see what that's actually about. And yeah, that's it. This one's nice and short. If you found this interesting, if you want to see more, subscribe, like, share, all that fun stuff. Peace.